Am I?
I know.
Gratitude Café, positive radio to feed your soul.
Woohoo! We are live. Isn't there? I feel like there was that show. Well, good morning, everybody. Sue Lundquist here. It's the Gratitude Cafe. Benny, hi.
There's a bunch of shows that are live, like this one.
No, not live. There was that, he was like an animal catcher or something. Live. That, like Louisiana or something. He would say something to the effect like, oh, I'm going to have to think about it and I'll get back to you. Sorry, audience.
The Tiger King?
No, I'm not even going to watch
whatever?
that. We're not going to go there.
Okay.
Not a Zippo. No. All right, Radio World, YouTube world, 11:50 a.m., of course, on the dial. And of course, internationally on the internet, AM 1150, KKNW is at 1150. I always get it all messed up. Benny, what's the website? www.
For which? I mean, where do you want to send people, Sue?
How about YouTube? Y'all can go to YouTube
Just go
and
to
all you have
YouTube
to type in is 1150. Yep, that's it.
click
And you
it
can
in.
see us goofing off.
Mm-hmm.
You can see
Or
Benny in
1150
studio. You can see Malcolm in the UK.
Yep.
You can see me wherever I'm at. Sueville happens to be Sueville. So good morning, everybody. We have an incredible show today, just like we do every day, every Tuesday. So glad that you guys are here. Today, you know what we're going to do, Benny? We're going to slay some dragons.
Let's do it.
Slaying some dragons. Slaying some dragons, but with compassion.
Big heart.
Love that. Big heart. Whoop, 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 whoop. Malcolm, you got to do it too. Whoop, 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 whoop.
Too early, too late.
The heart like this. I love it. I can't do a screenshot when I have my hands like that. All right. Slaying your dragons with compassion. 10 ways to thrive even when it feels impossible. Thriving right now in today's world. Well, any world, anytime, as far as I'm concerned, having compassion is one of my key essence of self. So compassion to others, compassion to animals, whatever it is, compassion is number one for me. It's one of my morals, my values, and how I live my life. Before we get started, before I introduce Malcolm Stern with you, I want to remind all of you about the online C2C program. So go from craziness to clarity. And that is all of you, we're shedding old beliefs, old habits, those experiences attached to those old habits, limiting beliefs. Oh my gosh, self-sabotaging. Do you need self-regulating tools and mindset tools like me? Well, that's what I did. I created that with the C2C course you can do online. And that's also my curriculum. That's how I coach. It's a specialty of mine. I've personally created it. And I bridge 3D practicality with 5D frequencies and energy and your intended outcome. So with that being said, you guys can go online to SueLundquist.com and look up C2C. We are going to be launching. Whoop, whoop. Can I get a whoop, whoop? Benny, can I get a whoop? Whoop, whoop. I love it. Bill, Malcolm's giving me one. Nice. We are doing a mini live C2C starting January 4th. So if you want to be a part of that, because I want to see you on Zoom, you can ask me questions. And it's going to be really powerful. So you guys can sign up for that shortly, or just send me an email at supersuecares@gmail.com and we will get you in the know. Of course, get the newsletter. Of course, follow us on Facebook and Instagram and all that juicy stuff. Go to SueLundquist.com, follow the links, and you're good to go. All right, slaying some dragons with compassion. Oh, Malcolm, so glad that you're here. Yay! Oh, I love it. All right, I'm going to do the formal introduction, but of course, when I do the formal introduction, then Malcolm, I'm going to let you talk and I'm going to let you introduce yourself to the audience because we want to get to know you. And I love your voice because it's,
British.
It's British and I love it.
That's how you get British, you do as well.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. All right. Malcolm Stern has worked as a group and individual psychotherapist for more than 30 years. He is co-director, co-founder of Alternatives at St. James Church in London and runs groups internationally. His approach involves finding where the heart is and helping individuals access their truth. I'm trying to speak. His London one-year group is the centerpiece of his work and has been successfully operating since 1990. Drum roll, beautiful, Malcolm. In it, he created an environment of trust, integrity, community. Beautiful, we're in the right place then, where participating can become skilled in relationships, communication, and managing difficult conversations. The ultimate learning is to slay your dragons with compassion. I love that. Malcolm, welcome, love.
Thank you so much, Sue. Hi, lovely to see you.
Thank you. All right, love. Of course, I've got your beautiful bio, but let's get to know you, your backstory, because you've obviously walked your talk, right? I mean,
I think it's a process. I am in the process of walking my talk more than I have done before, but there are always blind spots. So I'm wary of people who say they've got it, you know, and I'm certainly on a path where I'm practicing it. That's for sure.
yes, fostering it, integrating it in different aspects of life. The audience, I coined this, Malcolm. This is pretty clever. I was talking on the radio with a guest a few years back, and I said, no, we just got to have the CCs in life. And it's the compassionate curiosity for ourselves and others, because it takes that, you know, the sting or the resentments or the fears. Get curious, have compassion, open your heart. Malcolm, I know we were talking about Slay Your Dragons with Compassion, your book, but I'd like to know, and I'd like that audience to know a bit about your backstory and how you got to this beautiful book.
Well, the interesting thing is, it is a beautiful book, and I never expected to write a beautiful. I've written 2 books before. They were good. They were workmanlike, and they were about relationships, and they were fine. But in 2014, my daughter Melissa took her own life. And you know, whenever I talk about it, I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm really comfortable with my own feelings that come up around it as well. And that led me on an incredible journey. It is leading me on an incredible journey. It was one of the most shocking things that could have happened. I was midway through running a group. I was 3.5 days into a 4.5-day group, residential. And I heard about it in the lunch break. And I came back after the lunch break and I said to one of the guys in the group, my daughter's taken her own life. Can you run this session this afternoon? And he was also a psychotherapist, fortunately. And he did a grief circle. And he said, those of you who've lost a parent, step forward. And about the group of 16, about 7 or 8 people stepped forward. Those of you who've lost a sibling or a dearly close friend, step forward. 4 or 5 step forward. Those of you who've lost a child, step forward. And it was just me. And in that moment, it landed. In that moment, my life changed because it hadn't really landed before. The shock takes a while to come into the system.
Yes.
And one of the first things I did, well, what was interesting is the group just took me to their hearts. When you run a group, you don't take center stage. But in that afternoon, I took center stage with the willingness and the love of the group. And surrounded by love and care, this group had been working together for a year. So there was a lot of love and care in that group. Wow. I felt so thoroughly nurtured by it in that space. It was pure magic, pure beauty. So the next morning, one of the first things I did was I wrote a poem because I felt like something in me had to come through. And with grief, there are a number of different things that can happen. I could have just gone into sort of wailing and gnashing of teeth. I didn't. It's like it came on in bits and pieces. But I wrote a poem the next morning, and that I posted on Facebook as a way of letting people know about my daughter. And I had such extraordinarily beautiful responses. It just really heartened me as well. And then I joined a suicide support group for people who've been bereaved by suicide. Learned an awful lot from people who are on the same journey as me. And went into therapy. I hadn't been in therapy for years, except in supervision. And I wasn't ready for it. It's like, I was theorizing, but not feeling. But then I started speaking. I give lectures and I started speaking. And and I found that the feelings came through while I was speaking, and I realized that this was part of it. Melissa was now part of my gig, as it were. And it was really beautiful. And about 2018, I met up with a friend of mine called Ben Craig, and he said, let's do a book. You know, I'll support you. He's an editor and a writer. And so we went on Zoom. We put a proposal into Watkins, and we went on Zoom 2 mornings a week. It was really religious. 2 mornings a week. We plotted in the time from 9:30 to 11:30, and then we did extras as well. And we started to let this unravel. And the extraordinary thing is, I once read a book by a woman called Taylor Caldwell called Dialogues with the Devil. And she said halfway through writing the book, she realized that she was actually having the dialogues. And as I was partway through writing this book, I realized, and I'm definitely not of a mystical bent, although I have a strong spiritual side, I realized that Melissa's spirit was guiding this book. And it came out in it was perfect. And it's like, I almost couldn't believe it. And like Ben felt like the architect was building the structure, and I just felt like I was flowing with the material. And it was absolutely, it said everything I wanted to say. It linked it with all of the things I've learned in my groups from people who've been in my groups and told lots of group stories. But it also I shared a lot about myself, my personal life, and what I'd learned in that journey. And realized, even though I hate the 10 ways to do this and 15 ways to do that and 8 ways to do that, there were some practices that I actually was already engaged in that were helping me through this really difficult time. And so I started to map those practices. And that's what the book is about, is mapping those practices, because it happens to be exceptionally timely, thriving when it feels impossible. It feels bloody crazy out there right now. So that's
right?
Yeah, yes.
It does. 10 ways to thrive even when it's not possible or you feel it is impossible.
Now, the amazing thing is, Sue, just before we go into it, is that I sent the book to, once I'm writing it, I started sending it to people who I knew would either like it or not, who could give me endorsements. And the first person to respond to me was Liz Gilbert.
Yes, Liz Gilbert, Eckhart Tolle. I love it. Jack Cornfield. I love
Eckhart Tolle, Craig David. And they were people I knew. I didn't just go cold to people, but all of them were touched by the book. And that was what was amazing.
So touched by the book, touched by a true story, touched by Malcolm's experience through his grief and walking his talk. He's created 10 steps, 10 ways. You languaged it different a minute ago. What did you say? The book said 10 ways.
Even when it feels impossible is the subtitle.
Yeah, but you were calling it something else, like tools.
Practices.
What? Practices. That was it. Practices. Yeah, because it is a practice, right? And we have to integrate it.
Yep.
Hands down, and audience knows this. This is not fast food. This is a practice. This is an evolution. That's why I bring people like yourself on here that can really talk and dive into real life ways to thrive. And yours is through compassion. Tell me what compassion means for you.
It means recognizing that each of us is a lot more than this bunch of bones and skin and face and dress that we wear. That each of us is part of the ocean, is a part of the divine. And that actually if we don't see what another is, if say another person comes at us angrily, if we take it personally, we just play out the same roles we've always played out. But if we recognize that something's going on in them and can hold a place of compassion, hold a place of recognizing that this is also a beautiful being, and right now they're going through something. And maybe there's something to hear in that anger as well, but it's like, if we don't get caught, then we start to be able to communicate at another level down from where we've been communicating.
I love that. And being able to, one, stand in that awareness. I talk about that a lot. And having that awareness versus denial or defensiveness, resentment, the opposing side. So having, like Malcolm was talking about, having that awareness that somebody is going through something and not taking it personally. That whole not taking it personally. I've raised 3 daughters myself, and that's a petri dish of not taking things personally. Oh my God, help me. Whoa. But that it's been a great lesson for me. But going back to holding space, Malcolm, like you were talking about, holding that sacred space when it is obvious that somebody's going through something, if they are in a trigger and you are able to step back, hold that space and go, I'm going to stand in awareness. I'm not going to go unconscious. And I'm going to hold space for this XYZ person because this isn't normally how they show up. Yeah. That right there is the magic sauce, really.
And if you're in an intimate relationship with another, what a great place to practice that.
Wow. Totally. Okay. So what does it mean to tune into the elusive sixth sense, and how can that be strengthened? Let's get into the nuts and bolts. What is that, and how do you define it, and how can we get it stronger?
Well, working as I have done for about 35 years running groups, I'm constantly in a place where I'm working with my sixth sense. There's a muscle that I've been applying again and again and again till it becomes strong. So our logical mind, and Eckhart Tolle talks about this, that actually our mind can be the biggest trap and an addiction to going to thinking, to work things through. Our logical mind wants to take things where the ego wants it. Our intuition, our sixth sense, our radar, as I call it in this book, is actually the place where wisdom can come through from an unsought after place. I'll give you an example of that. I was once in a group and someone said to me, oh, I see a man laughing in your belly. And I said, what does he look like? He said, he's got a long beard and all this sort of stuff. And it was basically a guru that I'd signed up to and never left the organization. This is my much younger days. And she said, send the letter. She tuned into something and I sent the letter disengaging with this guru figure. And it felt like something got released in me. She had tuned in. You would never have found that through intuition. So
wow. Oh, I'm really totally, absolutely. You're speaking my language. Yeah.
Right. Good. It's not really my language normally, so that's good. Help with that too. That's good. Yeah.
Yes. So you sent off the letter, and
so I sent off the letter and resigned from that structure, and you know, it felt like something had shifted, something had lifted off me. And very often we're getting intuitive responses to things. We'll get a feeling, maybe that we want to ring someone, and they ring us. You know, so it's like we've actually sort of, you know, these are radar things.
Oh yes. I love how you call it radar. Is that your practical mind going, oh, it's radar, it's not intuition? I'm not going to go.
I think radar it's like it is intuition, but it has to be worked with. And radar for me means actually feeling your way into that place where you're going to take some silence around it, where you're going to actually allow your intuition some space. You're also going to tune into when the right time to have dialogues is. You can blow a conversation by choosing the wrong time. So a husband's just off to work, the wife calls out and says, I'm really upset about it. He said, I can't do it right now. She feels rejected. He feels like, oh God, you know, what have I done? And there's a load of stuff that happens later on in the evening. But actually, if we can choose our dialogues, and Thich Nhat Hanh, the great Vietnamese Buddhist master, he has a lovely example in one of his books. He said, a man's talking to his wife and he said, my darling, I was really hurt when you said that. Could we meet on Friday evening and talk about that? And it's like he knew that on Friday evening at the end of the week, there's space to talk, and they took the space and landed it. So there's a wisdom in choosing the right time, the right place, and also the right intonation, that actually we're not accusing, we're actually looking at trying to understand something.
I love that. You know what comes up for me, Malcolm, when you say, and I'm going to the great example that you just shared. Well, can we wait till Friday to talk about this? My mind then goes, I don't know if I can wait till Friday. I can hear the audience going, wait a minute, wait till Friday. Then I'm going to be like a blah. My head's going to be exploding because I'm going to be thinking up things in my own head instead of actually having a legit conversation. So is that where compassion comes in?
I think that is where compassion, it's a recognition that actually this dialogue is important and needs to take place at a time when both of you have got some freedom and some capacity. And also that we make a practice. So maybe you choose during that time where you're going, wah, maybe you ring one of your friends and say, hey, you know, like, you know, we've had this stuff going on and I'd really like some input. So you start to activate one of the exercises in the book.
Like vent it off?
Yeah, but also that you're looking for honest reflection. You're looking for a place where you're going to get received. And one of the practices I've listed in the book is about finding your Sangha, which is a Buddhist term for community of like-minded others.
Yes.
So if we look to find our Sangha, our community, then we've got people we can turn to and go, hey, can you give me some reflection on this? Not someone who's going to say, oh, he's a really lousy guy,
no.
forget about him.
Yeah.
But someone who's going to actually hear you and be able to reflect for you.
I had a sneeze.
God bless you. God bless you.
Oh, I love that. Finding your Sangha, S-A-N-G.
S-A-N-G-H-A, Sangha.
H-A-A. Oh, I've heard that before.
Yeah,
okay,
it's a Buddhist term, and I think a lot of the ideas have been influenced by Buddhism. And I think Buddhism is a very interesting philosophy, and I draw on it where I can as well.
It's a modality, right? Modality
Exactly.
in the sense, everybody's got their modalities, their tools. So whatever brings you to heart center, whatever brings you back to compassion, use it. If it's chopsticks, if it's Buddha, if it's slaying dragons, if it's my Levi, whatever it is. Yes. All right. I love that. I love that. And yes, finding your tribe. So we're talking to Malcolm audience about 10 ways to thrive, even when it is impossible. One of the tools, he's like, find your tribe. Somebody that's not going to pacify you, somebody that you can really have an honest, genuine conversation with truth. You know what? That's a great segue. What about your truth? Can we define that? I talk a lot about that because during my journey, I didn't even know what my truth was. I didn't know what love was. I didn't know what self-love was. It was like I was tore wide open and I had to go restructure and reclaim myself. And that you heard me talking about the C2C and my coaching practice. And it is all of those self-regulating tools like the CCs, compassionate curiosity. But I love having that conversation with my guests. What is your truth? Finding your truth. How do you even define that? Like step one.
I think the more we develop ourselves, the more we have the capacity to tune into a deeper part of ourselves. So our ignorant truth, I don't say ignorant as a judgmental thing. I mean, from the place where we don't know anything, might be that, that person's treated us badly. But as we develop ourselves, we start to find a deeper place inside ourselves. And one of the angles in order to speak your truth is to slow down, is to actually take time to tune into yourself so that we start to feel what truth is also to get reflection from compassionate others who will actually be able to help you see what's yours and what's another's. And the other thing is not to blame another. Your truth is not about saying you did this to me. Your truth is about saying, I felt this when you did that. So you're starting to find more subtle and more powerful ways of communicating.
That, and when you say I felt this, that's ownership and responsibility versus denial and resentment.
Yes.
And that's super, super powerful. And I'm addressing the audience because I can hear the questions that says, well, and audience, this from hundreds of radio shows. Everything that I'm talking about is all from a space of compassion and love, and likewise for Malcolm as well. It's not about us judging you. We're holding a sacred space for you and we're giving you an education. So if you find that something that we say is going to trigger you, you know what? Explore it. If there's a squeaky wheel in there and I've triggered you by something that I've said, or Malcolm, go in. And just like you offered, Malcolm, one of the tips for Slay Your Dragons with Compassion is slow down, do self-reflection. And I felt this. Take ownership and responsibility, accountability for you. Reclaim your power. That's some of my language, right?
And also keep educating yourself. I mean, read good literature, listen to wise people speak, practice meditation, keep doing the things. Listen to great music. I mean, for me, when I discovered Leonard Cohen, I discovered someone who had the secrets of the universe as a bard, as a minstrel. I'm a big fan of his, so I always like to bring him in. So.
Oh, you do? Absolutely. Bring in all the tools.
Yeah.
I know that when I find that because I'm pretty happy all the time, but it's a choice, right? But there are times where, I'll have a lull and I will I'll go on like YouTube or something and I'll find babies and puppies that the baby's laughing because it's just that pure joy and puppy breath. I mean, hopefully you like puppies, but some people are fair, but it's irrelevant for some people. But that brings me true joy and of course, being of service and doing other things like that. All right, guys, we are going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to continue talking to Malcolm. We're going to continue slaying dragons. And we're going to do it with compassion. We have got Malcolm Stern here all the way from the UK, and we will be right back. Okay. Yay! Okay, so we're on YouTube still live, Malcolm. How are you feeling?
Can I turn my light up a little bit? My light's got a bit dim, so I'll turn that up and I'm going to turn the heating down.
All right. How are we sounding on your end, Benny? Yay. I do love that sweater.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I really do. Oh, it looks so cozy.
Looks like a sleeping bag.
I love it. It's a good meditation hat or meditation jacket.
It's great. I love it. It's my favorite sweater. So, yeah.
I love it. Oh. So how are you feeling intuitively, or how's your radar on how you're feeling with the radio show? Is there an angle that you would like to speak more to?
It's lovely. I'm happy to let the flow go, and you're tuned in, so we'll tune into each other. That's great.
Perfect. So YouTube world, will you hold up the book for me, please, or for all of us, Malcolm? I'm going to do a quick screenshot. Say cheese.
And then you can do the back as well, because it's got some lovely endorsements on the back as well.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, yes. Speaking of endorsement, and I butcher his name? Eckhart Tolle? Is it Tolle?
No, you do it well. That's what he's called.
Okay, Eckhart Tolle. I mean, Elizabeth Gilbert, Jack Kornfield. You've got some beautiful testimonials, or not testimonials, endorsements.
Also, Eva Schloss, who was Anne Frank's stepsister who survived Auschwitz. She's 90 years old and still on the speaking circuit.
What?
And she's amazing. And Lama Chimi Rinpoche, who's a close friend of the Dalai Lama, said this is close to the Buddhist philosophy. It's like which I didn't deliberately do, but obviously I'm touched by that.
Of course you are. Oh, that's beautiful. And I think, and audience, you guys whoever's watching us here in YouTubeville, compassion, and we were talking about this at the first part of the hour, that one of the biggest tools that Malcolm was talking about is slowing down and having that tribe to have a self-reflection, slowing down and honesty. And then I feel this, taking accountability, taking responsibility for your actions and behaviors. How language I use, Malcolm, is how am I showing up? How are you showing up?
Yeah.
And when I engage in conversations, I ask them permission. Do I have your permission to do the self-reflection? Because it's an accountability. Oh, we're going back. All right, here we go.
Dragon lived by the sea.
Oh, good call there.
Oh, I love it. Oh, live by the sea. All right, we are back, you guys. We're slaying some dragons with compassion, with some real life practical tools. We were talking about the radar, the capacity of our truth. Always and continuing to discover yourself, educating yourself. A big tool that Malcolm was talking about in his book was slowing down, that self-reflection, finding that tribe that's not going to pacify you, that's going to hold you accountable in a loving, sacred space.
Exactly.
That's the key word right there, because if you don't feel safe, I say this all the time. I know if I don't feel safe, I ain't opening up. It's just not going to happen, flat out. So find that tribe that will give you that honest, loving reflection and a safe place to land and a safe place to have.
And also develop that tribe, so that tribe has to be worked on. You have to have practices that with the tribe where you're actually speaking truth, where you're daring. There are 2 golden rules to slay your dragons with compassion that I've written in the book.
Okay.
One is to always speak your truth as much as you're able. It's like there are going to be times when you can't. And 2 is to never hurt another more than is necessary. And I remember going to a wedding once, and the bride and groom took their vows and said, we vow to hurt each other. I thought, God, that's weird. And then they said, and we also, because it's going to happen, and we also vow to clear up the mess when that happens. And that was profound.
That is beautiful. Always speak your truth. And that's going to lead us into another question, because I go in, and I did this for myself because I'm a recovering people pleaser, and the boundaries and codependency and all that's an old story, and I have no emotional charge to it anymore, but it is language that I use because it's very important, right? So speaking our truth, we talked about what truth is, how you do that, but having the conversation and being able to speak your truth and having those boundaries, that's super, super important. You use a different language. Practicing speaking your truth in ways with integrity can be received heartfelt. I talk about speaking your truth or putting up boundaries and saying a respectful no with love and compassion. So how are you showing up? How are you languaging in the conversation? Being very aware and accountable. And I would love to noodle that with you and the audience about how to have that the tough conversations, loving conversations.
That's the place where we really get to practice this stuff. It's easy to have great conversations. Oh, I love you, you're so beautiful. Yeah, that's great. Any idiot can do that. But how do you actually do the stuff where you actually, there's something, I was working with someone this is afternoon, my time. This morning I was working with a client, and she was talking about having some distance between her and her mother, and we started to peel away the layers, and she said, oh, I forgive her, she's done all this, and I forgive her. And I said, hang on, it feels to me like there's still some resentment there, and while that's sitting there, you're not going to be able to have this close relationship at the point where her mother's getting very old, where you're actually going to speak what needs to be said. And then we had her practice it, because actually she first started saying, you did this to me. And I said, no, let's start this from, I'm going to be your mother. Let's do a little psychodrama here. So I was her mother, and I coached her then into how to say, I really felt hurt when, and to give it time. And there's something about having the conversation that actually owns your own feelings and doesn't make the other wrong. If I come to you and say, you got it wrong, you're immediately going to say one of 2 things. You're either going, oh yeah, I'm so sorry I got it wrong, or you're going to go, I don't want to have anything to do with you, go away. So it's really about, and it's also about asking permission. So I had to, and I had to do that. It's like, can I talk to you about this? So you're opening, and I also said, open the dialogue with a statement that's true, but that's also affirming. So this is one of the ways in which we speak our truth. So I said, do you love your mother? And she said, yes, I do. I said, then open the dialogue with, Mum, I love you. And then she did, and first of all, she said, Mum, I love you, and then started off, and I said, hold it. Transmit that. Mum, I love you. Let that be the basis for the dialogue. And then sort of say, listen, I've been holding some pain around something that happened between us, and I've noticed it's made me feel less close to you. And then she was able to start to say what was really needed to be said. And in a place where the mother wouldn't get defensive.
And what was that, love?
In a place where the mother wouldn't get defensive, because actually the practice we have is not to defend ourselves. If someone comes to us and says, I felt hurt when you did this, if we start to say, well, I did it because this or this or this, we're immediately going like that, we're clashing. Whereas if you can really hear and have the patience to understand before you want to be understood, if you can do that, then you have the possibility of having transformational conversations and integration with other human beings.
So speaking my language, Malcolm. I love this. Okay, I do. I love this. I love this. So, okay, I'm advocating for the audience. I hear them asking a question. What can I do if I'm showing up that way? The other person is important to me versus not so much. I mean, everybody's important, but if I'm in an intimate relationship, whether it's an intimate relationship with a partner, or I have, an intimate relationship with a mother. Let's go back to the mother example. For example, what if she is not receiving? I got permission. Go ahead.
Perfect. Because actually what I did was quote my client from a poem, I think it's by Machado, where he talks about that when you come across another, you put a piece of gold in their path. And if they don't pick it up, you calmly pick it up, put it back in your pocket and go on your way. Now, to translate this to the mother, what you do is if you don't get there, you go, I tried. I did, and maybe you try again and you do it in different ways, but actually it's not about forcing the other person to receive your reality. It's an invitation. And if you can engage with that at a relational level, you have the potential to transform the relationship. And I've seen that happen with my ex-wife, for example, where I have a really deep relationship with her. When Melissa died, who wasn't her daughter, she was a child from another relationship. Amanda and I, my ex-wife and I, got really close because there was honesty and there was pain between us. And I found the succor and support that I needed from my ex-wife and from my children, who were also suffering. We were all suffering, but actually we were suffering in a place where honesty was going to be the mean after that.
Oh, that honesty was, I love that. Honesty, folks. There's so much power in honesty. Two big buzzwords that I use, Malcolm: authentic and genuine. And that is like, oof, it's like, it just goes to your core. What is authentic and genuine to me in this moment? How am I feeling? Is this genuine and authentic to me? My truth, as you use that, and we've talked about that. Do you want to noodle and talk about?
Well, there's your truth, there's my truth, and then there's the truth. So I once saw an amazing play on television about a rape trial. And first of all, you saw it from the woman's perspective of what had happened. And then you saw it from the man's perspective of what had happened. And they were very different. And it was like both of them believed that what they were saying was accurate, but actually they had to find a place in the middle where there was really understanding of each other, and that some transgression had indeed taken place and needed to be atoned for. The tone, to rethink, to have remorse for, is to rethink. And actually there was a line that got crossed, but it wasn't the line that she had come to believe. It was a very interesting play. It was a long, long time ago, and I can't remember what it was.
Huh. That's a great example too, and something that can, a rape. That's pretty violating,
Yeah.
So slaying your dragons with compassion. Malcolm Stern, Eckhart Tolle, Elizabeth Gilbert, Jack Kornfield, and we have been talking. The first top of the hour, we're talking about a lot of stuff. The capacity of your truth, finding out what your truth is. A consistency of developing self. Trying to remember everything that we were talking about. Developing, you were talking, Malcolm, about, you used the word radar, finding your tribe, always speaking your truth,
where possible. Don't set yourself up to fail.
Well, let's talk about that. That's brilliant.
So there's a great example I read once in a book called The Shared Heart, which I read many, many years ago. And the example is that the man's walking down the street with his wife, and a beautiful woman's walking on the other side of the street. And she said, "What were you thinking?" And he said, "I was thinking about what it would be like to have to undress her and to sleep with her." That was his truth, but what a stupid thing to say at that moment. So we have to temper our truth.
Yeah.
And here's a really great example. There was a Catholic nun who was known for always speaking truth. And the Nazis came to the monastery, or to the nunnery, and they said, "Are you sheltering Jews here?" And she replied, "No." And it was the first time she had ever lied, and that was so much more potent than speaking the truth.
My whole head is just buzzing and my heart is just wide open. I love this conversation, Malcolm. You talk about.
Me too. It's a flow. It's a flow. It's like you're interested. You're accessing. You've got input. So we are noodling, as you put it.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Noodling, yes, noodling and playful, right? Noodling and being playful. What have we been told in the past that we have taken as true and often, you use the word blighted our lives? Explain that.
Just tell me where that comes from. Which chapter is that?
One of your questions. I was just.
Oh, I see. No, that's all right.
just-
I thought you were quoting something from the book. It's fine.
Well, that too, or you talk
No,
about
it's good. It's good. I got it.
Okay.
It's really
All right,
good.
love. Go.
So,
Yeah.
So for example, my mother had a mantra, and that mantra was hope for the best, but expect the worst. So I have found in my life that I catastrophize. I'm always looking for the worst possible outcome so that I'm preparing myself for penury and pain. And it's a terrible, terrible habit, and it has blighted my life. But I'm now practicing of hope for the best and actually allow life to present you with something that's healing.
Oh, I love that. And it's changing neural pathways and it's changing your nervous system.
That's very important. Our neural pathways can be changed.
Oh, hands down, they absolutely can. So changing, and I think that's.
Can I give you one more example? I've got a lovely example of mine. This is a friend of mine. So a friend of mine 18 years ago was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And the insurance company, because within 18 months of death, they started paying him out because the diagnosis was that he would die within 18 months. Anyway, 18 years later, he's still around. The insurance company is still paying him out. And what happened is he went to, and I'm not saying this is the cure for everybody, but he went to the Gerson Center in Mexico with his wife and spent 9 months on deep juice fasts and actually dealing with all the stuff that was going on, and came back healed. But according to the medical model, that was impossible. So actually, it's like if we can find our own journey where we are not given a diagnosis of what will happen to us, we have the possibility of making changes also in that way.
Yeah, don't believe the story somebody else is giving you.
Yeah.
You have the power, and it's going back to what you were talking about, Malcolm, at the top of the hour. And what is your truth? You say truth, I use the essence of you. It's all in that same paradigm. It's all in there. It's the essence of you. How are you genuinely and authentically choosing to show up, and genuinely and authentically choosing to hear and believe? Does that resonate with my true self?
Exactly.
Go ahead.
And there you are, you're looking at resonance. Then we start to get into a much subtler realm. So you'll listen to two political candidates fighting, for example, but somewhere inside you, you have to find the place where there's resonance and where you can actually make a diagnosis or a judgment based on what resonates with you. And we've stopped trusting that resonance. We're so occupied with sort of like our technological world that our resonance has a lot more trouble finding itself, which is why we need to meditate. We need to listen to beautiful music. We need to listen to inspiring speakers, all of this, and read inspiring literature.
Very important. There's some life with the media, life in general, fight and flight is rampant right now and then you add in diet, coffee, sports drinks, all these, don't get me started. I'm going to get on my
and we're no longer being able to go, aha. So I'll tell you something interesting. Friend, I do a regular Monday morning hour of Zoom with a friend of mine. It's part of our Sangha, part of our support system that we've created.
Oh.
And we have 20 minutes each and then 10 minutes of reflection each. So this is our structure.
Wow.
And we've been doing that for a long time, for actually many years. Funnily enough, I've just moved back to Totnes where he lives anyway, but because of lockdown, we're still doing it on Zoom.
Yeah.
Very interestingly, we both picked up and started rereading the book The Magus by John Fowles. And we've been talking a lot in the dialogue about anima and animus, how we're drawn to all of this sort of like, we fall in love with people because based on our sort of projection of who we think they are, and then we have to find out who they truly are. And he pointed out to me that the Magus actually captures that so brilliantly that actually it's the wisdom that's within that story. And both of us had picked it up, not knowing the other had picked it up as well, and read it and used that as part of our way of operating to look at relationships and what we'd always done. And he's been always deeply attracted to sort of like, this enchantment experience where he's going to meet the woman of his dreams just around the corner. And of course, they're not
romantic.
sustainable with your dream. Yeah, no, your soulmate can easily become your cellmate if you're not really careful with that.
Oh, did you guys catch that? Your soulmate can easily be your cellmate if you're not careful. I love that. Malcolm-isms. I've got some Malcolm-isms.
Great.
I love it. We are talking to Malcolm Stern. We have been talking about slaying your dragons with the beautiful compassion, your heart. Malcolm has been giving us some great tools. Slow down, self-reflection. We were just talking about how our world and our bodies, B-O-D-Y, we are just so consumed with busy, right? And slowing down, have that self-reflect, taking responsibility and accountability. I felt this way, and being able to do that. I'm sorry, I was also looking at our notes. And then when in a conversation, asking permission, may we have this conversation, or what? And if they, and like you so brilliantly said, Malcolm, you know what? If they're not going to pick up that piece of gold, they're not going to pick it up. Exactly. Put it back in your pocket and go on, right? And then try again. Yeah.
And if you can try until you get to the point where you go, no, it's not going to happen. Yeah. But also preface that dialogue before you say to have your permission. Preface it with something that's really acknowledging and affirming of the other person. Like,
for example, and this is what I use, and you can affirm this for me if this is good dialogue. I've used this before. It's, this relationship is extremely important to me.
Lovely. I love that. That's beautiful, Sue.
Because it genuinely is. This is the awareness and your self-truth and the essence of you, this conversation, because I talk about this a lot in the C2C and when I'm coaching. You then have to decide, even prior to this conversation, if this is truly, authentically and genuinely a relationship that is important to you.
Exactly. Don't bullshit.
If it's not, bless them and let them go.
Exactly.
And if it is important to you and they don't pick up the gold, bless them and let it go for a little bit and keep going back, right?
And get yourself supported in finding what needs to be said to shift that dynamic if it's so important to you.
Yes.
Yes.
No, Malcolm, that was beautiful, because if you're not able to give that person that piece of gold or have that united, compassionate conversation, both ways, find your tribe, or find that person that you can talk to, that you can relieve said issue. Is that a good adjective? I'm losing an adjective to describe, but whatever it is, if it's a fear that you're feeling, whatever's coming up for you.
If it's really important for you if the relationship is blighted by not being able to have that conversation, then find ways to have it, do everything you can to do it, so that at least you've given it your best shot. You're doing what you can to make it happen. And if you can't do it, also bless the other person for being unable to receive you. Don't want them to be different. Ram Dass is one of my great teachers. He's got a lovely mantra that I like to use as well when I'm just sort of like walking along, which is I am loving awareness, and that's a really beautiful mantra. But one of the things he used to say is that if you're in a relationship and you're waking up or awake and the other person isn't, you have one of two choices. One is you leave because actually you're in a different space. Two is you wait and be a place where that person can choose to awaken at any time without pushing them into be what you want them to be.
Oh, Malcolm, that is so valuable. And I'm going to advocate for myself and the audience, because and a little backstory with me, I spent 23 years with now my ex, 22. And the evolution in that process, I feel that I patiently waited to a point where it was destroying me. But I say that I just didn't want to make the other person wrong or shame. I just didn't, I wasn't, there was no fight. There was just, I didn't want to make them wrong for not wanting to drink that water or pick up that gold.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yes.
Can we have that conversation on how to help people that are they're crossing that bridge right now with that. You come to a point in your life where, you know what? We're going to agree to disagree, and it's going to be a situation where we're going to have to part our ways. Do you have anything with
that? Will be the case, and then you have to find ways of leaving compassionately without trashing the other person, so that you love that person before you leave that person as well. And you're doing this from a place of depth and understanding. I'll give you another small example from my own life. My dad was one of the kindest, most generous men I've ever met in my life. But when I came to him with issues or stuff that I needed advice and support on, he would often respond to me with cliches. And I used to get really frustrated with this because I wanted his wisdom. But actually, his wisdom was given out in his kindness and his generosity. And I wasn't going to get his intellectual wisdom. And when I stopped craving it, I was able to have a much more dynamic and beautiful relationship with him than I'd been able to have before.
You surrendered the control of what you thought it should be.
Exactly.
Oh, did you guys hear that? Surrender the control of what you thought it should be. I think that's a powerful message. All right, with that, Malcolm, I promised you, Benny and I promised you to get you out of here on time. I know that you had to leave early. Hold up your book for the YouTubers. Again, I'm going to remind everybody about Slay Your Dragons with Compassion. Malcolm Stern. Thank you, sweetheart. Big smiles.
Thank you so much. Can I leave you with a quote? Because you said something very interesting before. So I'd love to leave you with a quote, which is from Rabindranath Tagore, the great Indian mystic. And you talked before about service. And this is a quote that I've used in my book. I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I woke and found that life was service. I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I woke and found that life was service. I acted, and behold, service was joy.
Oh, you're gonna make me cry.
Good. I love crying.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, guys. It's been an absolute delight. I hope we manage to do this again and have
let's absolutely. I mean that genuinely and authentically. I do. Malcolm, thank you so much. Blessings, everybody.
Thank you so much.
All right, Benny.
Thank you, Benny, too.
Thank
See you later. Ciao. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. All right, to the radio world and the YouTube world. Yeah, Malcolm had to jet off. Slay Your Dragons with Compassion. Benny, what did you think of that?
Pretty impressive stuff. I hope a lot of our listeners took away the last hour for some information from themselves.
Wow, right? And especially with everything that's going, I mean, in general, but with everything that's going on in the world, just really getting in touch with yourself, taking those quiet moments, whether it's those quiet moments could be just shooting hoops. Those quiet moments could be meditation. It's just you getting back to you and not getting busy and riddled with the buzz and everything else that's going on. Turn off the TV, watch, and if the TV is on, go to really nice inspirational videos, some tips and tools that you can do, right? I know I joke about, if I have a lull, I will literally go to YouTube and find puppies and babies, like, puppy breath, because it's just adorable. And then babies laugh, that belly laugh, when the boys were little and they're just, and it just makes you so giddy. And I'm like, oh, switch, done. Right, Benny?
It's genuine. That's the good stuff.
Oh, it is. It is. I love it. All right. Well, you know what? Slay your dragons with compassion. 10 ways to thrive even when it feels impossible. Benny, you are oozing with compassion, my friend. My friend. Yes, always. Even that little bear face, that bear skinny head. And yes, it's got to be chilly. We got to get you like a muff or like ear muffs, but oh God, never mind. Okay, you know what? With that compassion, slay your dragons with compassion. I love you guys. We'll see you next week. And with that, each of you are a gift. Get out there and share yourself with the world.
Wow.